Welcome in to Chicago Bears Now. I am Harrison Graham, fresh off 3 videos on Thursday, including an at-home video last night. I'm back and better than ever here on a Friday, back in the studio, ready to give you guys today's news and rumors. And a big chunk of it will be around, yes, Nick Foles, what his future is going to look like, coming off Trevor Siemian agreeing to a 2-year deal. We'll get to those contract details in a second. Mike Garafolo had this note this morning. The Bears have explored trades for Nick Foles. With the addition of Siemian, expect that to continue as the writing is on the wall for Foles, who has $1 million of his base salary guaranteed, in addition to the $4 million roster bonus Chicago just paid him this month. Nick Foles is gone, folks. Barring something unforeseen, Nick Foles is not going to be on this roster next year, which makes sense. You don't need Trevor Siemian and Nick Foles, and that's why we've talked about cutting or trading Foles is very much a possibility. Now, we'll talk about the difference in price savings if you do cut or trade him. But first, do want to mention that Siemian's contract details did come in this morning, and Rapoport says it is that 2-year deal worth $4 million, a chance to make $5 million with some incentives, I would assume. Maybe if Fields gets hurt and he plays some, he could get an extra $1 million. But $2 million per year, Nick Foles makes triple, quadruple that. That's a good deal for a backup quarterback who has started a good amount of games in this league. Will the Bears trade or cut Nick Foles? It's going to be one of these two. This will be the pinned comment on today's video. Type T for trade, or you can type your C for cut. What will the Bears do with Nick Foles? Trading Nick Foles would obviously be the preferred outcome and an ideal outcome for the Chicago Bears for a very simple reason, because there are differences in how much the Bears save in cap space if they cut or if they trade him. Here are those differences. If you release him, cut him, you only save $3 million, dead cap hit of about $7.5 million. If you trade him, you save $8 million, only about $2.5 million in dead cap money. That's a big difference. You get $8 million, that goes a long way in free agency, especially at this point in free agency. You're kind of in that second, third wave now. You can get good deals for quality players. This is a team that got Byron Pringle for $4 million, a player who's probably going to start. You could get 1 to 2 starters, maybe a starter, a couple of depth pieces. Like $8 million helps you a lot. It can also help for your pay for your draft class too, because we always forget that in cap space. You need some of that money to pay for your draft class. Now, this is how the quarterback depth chart sits. I went ahead and put Siemian at QB2 because I don't think Foles will be on the team next year. Did forget last night, by the way, when we broke down the Siemian news, that Ryan Willis is on the roster on a futures deal. So, maybe he's your practice squad quarterback, as you've got Fields and Siemian as your top 2 guys, and then we see what happens with Foles. Like I said, Simeon's going to be the backup. I think that's obvious. You don't sign a quarterback to a multi-year deal to be QB3. That makes no sense. That never happens in the NFL, because a lot of teams don't even carry 3 quarterbacks on their 53-man roster. So Siemian is QB2, and now we'll see what happens with Nick Foles. This is why you subscribe, because the biggest storylines around the Bears, we're covering them, including the latest news, rumors, free agency buzz, trades, draft, live shows, Q&As. We do it all. Tons of different videos here on Bears Now, the #1 Bears channel here on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe, youtube.com/Bears Now. Now, these were a few teams that I thought could make sense for Nick Foles. I tweeted out a couple of these earlier, then added a few as well. The Atlanta Falcons, Matt Ryan's gone. They signed Marcus Mariota to start, but he's got an injury history. Their backup quarterbacks are Josh Rosen and Felipe Franks. That's not a good backup situation. Indianapolis Colts, Frank Reich connection from his time in Philadelphia. They've got Matt Ryan, Sam Ellinger behind him. Producer Coop thinks he's a beast, but I'm not convinced. The Jacksonville Jaguars. I think it's still a little weird to sell that. They traded him to the Bears. They're going to trade back for him, but they could use a backup behind Trevor Lawrence, and Doug Peterson is there. Who did Doug Peterson win a Super Bowl with as his quarterback? Nick Foles. So that could make some sense. San Francisco, after they trade Jimmy Garoppolo, which should happen at some point, they need a veteran backup for Trey Lance. I think that's possible. Seattle, you got Drew Lock and nothing else. That could be the one place where Foles actually has a slight chance of actually starting if he were to end up there. Say they don't want to trade for Baker Mayfield. Maybe trading for Nick Foles could make some sense. To me, I don't care what the Bears would get in return for a trade. it could be a 7th 3 years from now. Hell, the Bears could trade a future 7th along with Foles just to clear the cap. The $8 million is what you want. You get $8 million off your books. That's a game changer for Chicago this offseason. So I want to ask this question again. Remember, it's the pinned comment on today's show, so reply with the T or C. Should the Bears trade, or will the Bears trade or cut Nick Foles? Obviously, you would prefer a trade, but maybe they can't find a trade. Type T for trade, type C for cut. Hopefully, someone steps up in trades for this quarterback. Well, QB1 is Justin Fields. And by the way, we just crossed the 1-year anniversary of the Bears tweeting out QB1 and a picture of Andy Dalton. That lasted long. Justin Fields is QB1, and you should get his jersey at chatsports.com/FieldsJersey. Only $89.99 plus tax right now. Link in the comments and in the description of this video. Pick one up. Year 2 for QB1. Let's ride. chatsports.com/FieldsJersey. Let's get into another trade rumor. How about trading for wide receiver DeVante Parker from the Miami Dolphins? Reports out there that the Dolphins are shopping Parker after trading for Tyreek Hill because Miami now has Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Cedric Wilson. DeVante Parker could be lost in the fray there a little bit. 2 years left on his deal. Remember, he got a nice contract after or in 2019 when he played really well. Played well again in 2020. We'll show those numbers in a bit. Disappointing last year, but, Tua was in and out of the lineup. He didn't play that great. It's kind of hard to know how much that was on Parker. As far as money goes, because he did get a decent-sized contract, talk to my guy Tom Downey. He's our cap expert here. If you trade for Parker, you bring on just over $6 million of a cap hit. So, for example, if you trade Nick Foles, you save $8 million. You bring on Parker, you're still netting almost $2 million. To play with, and you add a receiver to your receiver room, and you get rid of Foles' contract. That's why trading him would be huge. You look at his last 3 years. Again, in 2019, he was fantastic. Best year of his career, 72 grabs, 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns. Still good in 2020, 63 for 804 touchdowns. Last year, it's not like he was terrible, but the production dipped, 40 for 515 and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, the touchdown numbers, you'd want that to be up. But I think with healthy and engaged, he can still be a wide receiver too. You could put him on the outside opposite of Darnell Mooney, put Byron Pringle in the slot. I don't hate it. He's been very up and down his career, though, so you have to factor that in. So here's a trade idea. My only trade idea. I don't know why I put number 1. It's all good. The Bears received DeVante Parker. You send a 6th-round pick for him because $6 million is not nothing, and the Dolphins don't have much leverage. So 6th-round pick to Miami for DeVante Parker. I think that makes a whole lot of sense, and I want to ask you guys this question as well. Would you do this trade? Type Y for yes, type N for no. Let me know down in the comments section. Would you do this trade for DeVante Parker? I'd consider it because he's still got good upside and he's proven he can play at a high level. How about drafting Alec Pierce? Let's explore that one as the wide receiver out of Cincinnati just completed his pro day. Bears wide receiver coach Tyke Tolbert was there, as he was at the Ohio State pro day, to go watch Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. We broke that down on a video yesterday. Subscribe and go check that out. Pierce, I think he's a solid day 2 wide receiver. Bears obviously need more help at receiver, which is why we're talking about Parker, why we're talking about Pierce here. Had a good year this year for the Bearcats. 17 yards per catch, I really like. 52 grabs, almost 900 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Pretty good numbers there. Pretty good speed. Good route runner. 4-year player at Cincinnati, so I like that as well. I think as a day 2 guy, I like it quite a bit. I would love him at number 71 overall. Is he going to fall that far? I don't know. I don't know if I would take him in the top 50. If I was Chicago, you've got those 2 top 50 picks at 39 and at 48 in this year's draft. As you look at the Bears' draft picks right now, I would prefer to get him in like the 50s or 60s. Maybe you trade down from one of those spots, pick up an extra selection and take him. I wonder if 48 is a little rich, but I think he's a good player. I think he's an underrated prospect this year. Some other day 2 wide receiver options to keep in mind. Again, Pierce. George Pickens out of Georgia. We've talked about him quite a bit. Good speed. Can high point the football, some injury concerns. David Bell didn't test well, but he's a good route runner. I like him. Christian Watson tested really well, but he's a little raw coming out of North Dakota State. John Mechie out of Alabama, some injury concerns. I think he's at more of a 3rd-round type of guy there. Maybe a Jahan Dotson falls to 39, but he's been getting a lot of round 1 buzz recently. And again, I don't think Chris Olave falls to the 2nd round, but there will be options on day 2, and not just these guys. There's the Tolbert kid out of South Alabama. There's there's other players as well. Like, there's going to be a lot of quality receivers that come off the board in the second and in the third round, so the Bears should have their pick of at least a few that they like, which is why you don't have to force it to trade up for Olave. Would I be okay with it? Yeah, I would. But I'm not breaking the bank to do so. I think it would have to be the right trade to go up and get him. A guy like Alec Pierce would be perfectly fine. If the Bears don't trade up for a guy like Chris Olave, name a receiver that they should draft. So let's just say they stay at 39, they stay at 48, they're at 71 as well. Name someone in this draft at the wide receiver position you would like to see Chicago draft. Let me know in the comments. All right, guys, we keep plugging out videos. If something else happens later today, we will have you guys covered. If not, we'll have videos over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, so stay tuned for that. Please subscribe. It's free. We're closing in on 45,000 subs. Help us get there. We'll see you soon here on Bears Now.